Nice to meet you, Mea. I think we briefly met at an MVNOs event in London where I saw you speak. So many thanks for joining me today. My name is Julian Watson. I'm a analyst focusing on wholesale telecoms at Omdia, and I'm delighted to invite Mea Thompson, who's co-founder at Unconnected. So perhaps if we could start, Mea, just to tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and your role at Unconnected.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me here. Excited to be a part of this, and I'm really looking forward to the MVNOs World Congress this year. Like you said, my name is Mea Thompson, co-founder at unconnected.org. And for the people listening in that don't know me, you can check out my LinkedIn profile because I think it really much compresses what I am. I think it says I'm an eSIM nerd, an MVNO fanatic, and I've got a major passion for digital inclusion. So these days I'm very much focused, or I'm dedicating this part of my career to bridging the digital divide. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks very much, Mea. So do check out Mea's LinkedIn profile from.
No, you don't have to. I just said what it said. So I spilled the beans.
So if you could tell me a little bit more about unconnected.org and its mission and perhaps some of the latest projects that you've been involved in over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. So unconnected.org, our mission is simple, but it's also complicated. So our focus is to connect 1 billion people to the internet. So we believe that internet access is not just a privilege, but it's a fundamental human right. And it's so essential for many things, both for education, for healthcare, for economic opportunities, for social inclusion. And I feel like, especially myself coming from the telecom industry, this is all what the telecom industry is about. Like, this is bringing back the telecom industry to its core. And, everyone listening into this, most likely you are in the telecom industry yourselves. And this is what we're doing all day. So we're improving customer journeys, we're improving latency, onboarding, expectations. But if we bring it back to the core, what we really are doing is that we're enabling all types of industries. We're enabling communities, we're enabling communication, education, healthcare, entrepreneurship. So it's about bringing connectivity back to its core. And now I'm excited because we've gotten some fantastic partnerships lately with the likes of Microsoft and others, where we're connecting millions of people at the time to meaningful connectivity. So yeah, good and busy times right now.
And I guess connecting those 1 billion people is pretty challenging in some circumstances, because the world is getting more challenging, isn't it? There's the civil conflict, there's the impact of the environmental sort of breakdown, if you will. So what type of challenges do you navigate in order to reach those millions of people that you're connecting?
Yeah, well, I would say that the main barriers to digital inclusion, many people focusing on the coverage part of it, saying, we know that, almost 40% of the world's population don't have internet access. And they say, well, it's because coverage issues. But we know that over 90% of the world's population have access to a 3G or 4G network. So coverage is a part of it, but that doesn't solve the whole puzzle. So that's why it's not just purely the telecommunication industry's responsibility to solve it, but coverage is one of the barriers. We've got affordability, which might be the biggest barriers. Even though you have access to a network, you can't afford to connect to it, and you can't afford the hardware to connect to it. The third barrier that we're working with daily is digital literacy. That's a big problem. So you might have access to the internet, but you don't really understand how to navigate it in a safe and constructive way. And the fourth thing, like you mentioned, is the social barriers. It could be cultural barriers, especially looking at female digital inclusion. in certain parts of the globe, which is a constant work for us to make sure that we're kind of focusing on that bit. So there are many barriers, but I want to point out that none of those barriers we can't overcome. But yeah, it demands some focus and some work.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mea. It's fascinating to see. If you look at the unconnected.org website, the variety of projects that you're involved in many different countries for very different, purposes and objectives. So do please take a look at your website too. So you mentioned that you're an eSIM nerd, or maybe I should say an eSIM specialist. So I believe you'll be speaking at a panel at MVNO World Congress on the role of eSIM in digital transformation in June, I believe. So I just wanted to ask you, perhaps where we are with eSIM adoption today, because the concept has been around for quite a few years. It seemed that in past years, perhaps adoption was quite slow. But what is driving eSIM adoption, and what are some of the barriers and challenges, such as onboarding? I think is quite a common challenge that I hear about.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think the first panel that I was on talking about eSIM, that was back in 2018 or 2019. Don't quote me on that. And it was at the MVNO World Congress in Amsterdam. That was my first ever kind of eSIM panel, and what's that? 6 years ago. And since then, and back then when I talked, I got a lot of buyback from the operators saying, eSIM is never gonna come through. We don't really see the adoption. We don't see the use cases. There was a big pushback, and now it's changed. Do I feel like it's changed rapidly enough? Not really. We've been talking about eSIM at conferences now intensely for the last 4 years, and we're seeing adoption, but we haven't really seen that uptake that I thought was going to happen. Now, however, we're seeing a shift, and the shift is very much depending, I think, on the hardware, the OEMs, especially looking at Apple and the way that they are designing their hardware to be eSIM only, which means that the operators and the other parties, they really need to come to the table now and find optimized solution to cater for this new interest from the public. So that's why I think in the last year or so, we've seen more of an intense discussion around eSIM. So I'm looking forward to see the discussions this year. There are barriers. I know we talked about barriers before, but there are barriers in this as well, especially, again, looking at the OEMs, not mentioning any names. I'm sure there will be discussions around this in the panel about, how do we enable, especially now with the focus on MVNOs, how do we enable the MVNOs with the same tools as the MNOs to be able to adapt to this transition to eSIM? So I talk a lot in my speeches about the unfairness in this situation, where the big players get access to the best potential tools, whilst the smaller, potentially more agile and willing to adopt to this new technology, those players, they don't. And why is that? And how can we as an industry work to kind of level the playfield?
Oh, thank you. So it was sort of my perception, maybe the wrong perception, was that perhaps MVNOs were moving perhaps faster with eSIM than MNOs, but maybe that might be the wrong perception.
No, you've got 100% the right perception. I think they want to move faster and they want to be more agile with the eSIM technology. However, there are outside factors which are hindering them to be as to onboard customers as easily using eSIM technology compared to the larger players, which got access to more services from the OEMs.
Thanks very much. And I think the last question I have for you, Mea, is what are you seeking to achieve to get from attending mobile MVNO World Congress I nearly said Mobile World Congress, but I said MVNO World Congress this year?
Yeah, no, and it's easy to say the wrong thing because our mind's been around the World Mobile Congress because it's fairly recent we were there. Well, first of all, I always laugh when people ask me these questions, like, who do you looking forward to meet at the MVNO World Congress? Because it feels like you know everyone there. Like, it's such a small community in a sense. You walk in and, you know, you're worried about getting COVID before you even step through the doors because you've been hugging, you know, 50 people on the way through the doors. But I'm really looking forward to meet that community again, meeting everyone that we know. We're really interested in understanding more about, you know, the new findings that's coming out and hearing how the shift and the discussions are moving, as well as obviously meeting a lot of the partners of Unconnected. It's really exciting to see how the MVNO industry has backed up our organization. So I'm really proud about that. So I'm looking forward to some good conversations there. And of course, maybe having 1 or 2 beers after the conference together with good friends. It's going to be fun.
Indeed, and it's the right country to enjoy those beers, I think, Belgium.
Oh dear, and the chocolate and the waffle. Oh,
and the
stuff me
chocolate and the chocolate and the waffles and the chips, I think. But maybe that's more Netherlands, but I think they do good chips in Brussels too. Well, many thanks for your insight and for your time this morning, Mea, and I'm very much looking forward to see your panel and meeting with you at MVNO World Congress in June.
Likewise, and I think one thing that I'm looking forward to the panels this year is that looking at the panels is going to be different opinions on some of the panels, which I'm really looking forward to. So the panels are constructed in such a way that there might be some debate. And I think that's the kind of debating element to the panels where we're probably going to get the most insights. So I'm looking forward to see some great conversations, some debates, and get some chocolate in between those meetings.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Well, many thanks again for your time this morning, and I'll see you in June.
I'll see you there.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.